Support for WBFO and What's Next comes from our members and from Health Foundation for Western and Central New York, where racial and socioeconomic health equity are prioritized. Learn more about building healthier neighborhoods at hfwcny.org.
I'm Jay Moran.
I'm Bridget Jaipal Valenza.
I'm Thomas O'Neill White.
We need to get together and let our voices be heard.
This is What's Next, a dedicated hour to have important conversations about the issues facing the marginalized and underrepresented communities of Western New York and Southern Ontario.
If we're going to have some real healing, we've got to have space to tell some uncomfortable truth.
What's Next continues our mission to discuss race,
equity,
and the common concerns of Buffalo's East Side and beyond.
In the suburban area, everywhere, we must work and teach our children.
And good morning. Welcome to What's Next. Today we are going to talk about, I would have to call it the controversial, I don't think I'm overstating that particular use of an adjective here, the controversial school bus stop arm camera program in the city of Buffalo. Here to talk more about it are a couple of concerned individuals and both, I would say, critics of the program. With us, Bishop Michael Badger, president of the urban think tank of Buffalo. Pastor, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And also with us, Sam Radford, also of the urban think tank of Buffalo. Sam, thanks for being with us.
Hey, Jay, thank you so much for inviting us.
Well, I got to admit, you were able to catch my eye last week with your release regarding the first, 10 days of the school bus stop arm camera program that saw, over 2,200 tickets given out in the city of Buffalo with an estimated revenue of over $500,000. Let's just talk right off the bat about that. Were either of you surprised when you saw those particular figures?
Well, 2,250 is the exact number of tickets, and $562,000 is the exact number of revenue. Yeah, obviously, that was astonishing, and it was even more than what was the month before, where they did the warning period. And so what it did to me, immediately alerted to me to how serious this situation is. This is a serious issue. It's a accident or a problem or a threat to our children waiting to happen. And so I was looking for a sense of urgency that came with that number. And I saw the number, and I didn't see no sense of urgency to do something about it immediately, because we know that our children are at imminent risk.
And, of course, he also caught attention with another number, and that is 60%. 60% of this revenue will go to a private company?
Yeah, and, as I said when we were talking earlier, no one goes into business for benevolence. Right. So obviously they've done the research. They know, and I'm sure that the business that came to Buffalo and has installed these cameras were not surprised by the numbers. They knew that this would be the type of results. And the city also knew that, because my understanding is that I think $2.5 million is being budgeted in the budget from these fines that they're going to receive from this particular company. So the research was done. They knew that people were going by buses, and this is a concern. We're not saying we want the number one priority is our children be safe.
Right.
The question is, does this provide that? And we don't believe that it does.
Well, just to add on to that, Bishop, Bus Patrol absolutely knew that this was going to happen. When you look at other places they're at, Bus Patrol is doing this. That's the name of the company that has to stop our Bus Patrol. They are doing this on 30,000 buses in 16 states. So they knew what the research said. They also guaranteed the city a minimum of $1.8 million, but they were projecting $2.5 million, and the city budgeted for $2.5 million in revenue. So there's no question about the fact that they had anticipated these numbers. And as Bishop said, this is a for-profit company. They're not in business not to make a profit. So they anticipated there was going to be a profit. And yes, 60% of that revenue from those tickets goes to a for-profit company. It does not circulate back into the city. And the other 40%, does not even go
right, does not go to the school district at all, which is not the research I was able to do. Not all school systems are necessarily getting this, but many school systems in different parts of the country where this program is implemented are getting anywhere from a minimal amount of revenue to actually a fairly significant chunk. I think in Alabama, one of the school systems gets 40% of all fines. In Florida, $200 from every ticket goes to the school district as well. We should also talk about the technology that's involved here. I think this is also part of it as well. This is something we probably couldn't have dreamed of maybe 10, 20 years ago, that there's a camera on the school bus stop arm, and that information is provided by artificial intelligence, right?
Yeah, actually, there are 8 cameras, not on the school bus stop line. There's 8 cameras around the bus. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? On all sides of the bus, the front of the bus, and the back of the bus, and the stop line. So, and that's fitted with artificial intelligence technology, and it captures everything that's going on in and around the school bus.
Okay. So right there's a whole nother issue. I mean, I know we're talking about fines and money and things along those lines, but we have enough time here. We can kind of go through each of these a little bit. I mean, the artificial intelligence part of it. I mean, I could go on the air right now live and talk about artificial intelligence, and I'm sure I'd get some blood pressure rising among our listeners for sure. I mean, right there. I mean, when you talk to city officials, does there seem to be either a concern about that, or maybe just a kind of a happy ignorance toward it as well? I don't know.
I think the city officials are trying to fill a budget in whole, and I think that's their major concern. They have a huge deficit, and they're trying to fill it. The challenge becomes is that you're already in a poor city, and we're not against necessarily a fine, but we're saying let it be proportionate. If you're going to fine to try to correct behavior, let it be proportionate to the income of the people that are being fined. $250 for someone living in Buffalo, the third poorest city in the country, is going to be a tremendous challenge. And then if they don't pay it, then you got fees and interest on top of it. You could lose your license. Your car could be impounded. You could literally destroy the future of a family with just one fine, especially when 60% of many people's income is going for rent. So our concern is how it disproportionately impacts poor people. And so I think, I don't know if our politicians thought about that, but we're here to get them to think about it.
Very good.
And to bring back to your point about AI, again, obviously for the people that we're most concerned about, that's obviously not the top issue, right? But it is a real issue. Anybody who paying attention understands that the reason why the investors who are investing in Bus Patrol is because of the data they're collecting. Because at the end of the day, that data they're collecting, that's how you do your predictive analytics. And so when you can start doing your predictive analytics, you can start doing behavior modifications. And, obviously people, like Dr. Shoshana Zuboff in the Age of Surveillance Capitalism warned us, that this day was coming where they're going to be Google and everybody else is going to be collecting your data. And so people just look at it as innocent. Oh, they got the bus arm out and it's catching people who are going by breaking law. That's all it's doing. No, that's not all that data is doing. There's a lot of other raw data, a lot of patterns that you can be studying from that. And people who understand the threat of that data. And the question is, did we even raise that at the Common Council when they brought them? Whose data is that? Is that Bus Patrol's data? Or is that the city's data? Who controls that? Because all that data goes to Bus Patrol. Bus Patrol then gives to the council that data, but do they maintain rights over what to do with the raw material to that data? Those are other questions that for another day.
They have not been answered.
I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Clearly.
Which is a good place to bring the question
And where do
up.
we stop at?
Right.
I mean, if I jaywalk and there's a camera, I could be fined. If I don't completely stop at a stop sign, you see, where are we going with this? Once you go down this road, and it shows a way of creating revenue for a poor city, where do you stop finding that?
And adding to the revenue part, if I'm not mistaken, also it's a escalating fine. Is that
Yeah.
You have first offense, second offense keeps going higher.
And there's
higher.
an interesting escalating fine. So the first one's $250, the second one's $275, and then there's added $50 going on forward, $25 or $50 going forward. But it's interesting because they set it up to where at no point will they, based on, it's just a fine. At no point will they put points on your license. So it's not trying to deter behavior to where they're giving you points like they would any other moving violation. They just want the money. Just so you can at some point make the choice that if you can afford it, you know what I'm saying, you coming in from, clearance and you don't care about the money, you know what I'm saying, you could just keep going past it because ain't nothing, you're never going to get a consequence other than having to pay the money. So it means something to poorer people, you know what I'm saying, that may be a deterrent, but that's not a deterrent. That don't make our children no safer when you can afford to pay that fine.
Let's talk about the safety of the children just for a little bit, just to make sure we get into that as well. And like we said earlier, this is a great opportunity to raise a lot of issues here. It was a little bit surprising to see the number of people who were fined for this infraction in just the first 10 days. I mean, we all sometimes drive down the road with maybe less attention than we ever, but over 2,000 people being fined for passing a school bus. I mean, it makes it seem like, I don't know, what are your impressions when you saw that number of people being fined?
If you ask me, because I've been looking at the issue for some time now, so I got a sense of the fact that what actually occurs to me is that, wow, you have that level of violation and there's been no accidents.
Okay.
No children been hit. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so obviously it's a problem that people are doing it, but obviously however people are doing it, they're not zooming by it, you know what I'm saying, and putting people at risk. They must be creeping by. They must be looking and checking and seeing if it's safe, because obviously every child is not crossing the street. Most kids actually, they try to set up the bus stop to where when you pick up the kid, you pick them up on the side of the street that they on. So most bus stops are the kids, the arm is out, but the kid is getting on the bus from the sidewalk to the bus. There's no crossing of the street. So there's nothing at risk when somebody is going by that bus in that way, right? But again, I'm not justifying it.
Of course.
I'm just saying that it's a reason why you have such a high level of violation and you have not seen people, injured or, you don't hear no stories of somebody being killed or somebody being hit. Why aren't you hearing that? Because obviously, some kind of way, the violation is not people are violating in some kind of responsible way. If there's a way to say that,
Sure.
We made the law as obviously a law, but obviously, people are not violating in a way that's putting people's lives at risk.
And I think, one child being hit is one too many.
Of course.
So the safety issue is paramount. That being said, we always have to follow the money. And at the end of the day, these fines become onerous to poor people. So if you're going to fine $50, $25, $75, $250 is just, I think for most working people is just way too much money and so here again, yes, we want to correct behavior. But we, at the same time, we don't want to create another problem and exacerbate an already situation in a poor city. And that's where we expect our politicians to look out for what's best for citizenship. We want our children safe. That's number one. Okay. At the same time, we also want to make sure that the most vulnerable population is not exploited.
Yeah, and ultimately, I don't know that we have we have proven that our children are unsafe.
Right. I was going to ask you that, Sam, because you are renowned for your involvement in the school district and school district issues. School bus safety, when it comes to cars passing it, was that ever an issue that ever came up in any of your meetings?
And it's interesting because no, that hadn't been an issue. But what was an issue is the fact that we don't have a bus aid on every bus. You know what I'm saying? There was an issue is that we got cameras on buses that are not working. You know what I'm saying? So here it is where you need the camera for real student safety, you know what I'm saying, where you need the resources to go to pay for bus aids, we haven't committed to doing that, but we've committed to collecting these fees to give 60% of it to a for-profit company, for their bottom line. You know what I'm saying? So, the question is whether this is really about student safety. Student safety is, this is a covering that emotionally, like when we put this, out in social media, people react, well, people should just follow the law. I mean, why people, I think you should, make the ticket 3 times that, because people shouldn't be breaking the law, right? So, and I get the surface reaction to that. You shouldn't be breaking the law, right? But let's talk about the law. You know what I'm saying? Because human beings have to make the law. And then I think when it comes down to is that we're not prioritizing student safety, because if we were prioritizing student safety, that data for the first 10 days was a stop the press. Hold on. A child is at imminent risk right now, you know what I'm saying, because of the level in which this law is being violated, if that's what the law is about, right? And it's not a stop the press. It's the program is doing what the people who brought the program expected it to do. The program is going to benefit the city, you know what I'm saying, because they're going to hit that number that they were doing. And the people who did the research, who understand human behavior, who understand what they call psychological vulnerabilities, they understand that it's going to be over a 2 or 3 year period. Even though the research says 90% of the people who get a ticket don't reoffend, right? Okay. Right. But the point is, it's enough new offenders every month to where this is going to be profitable, you know what I'm saying, for a significant period of time, to where all the money they put into it, because they got to outfit the buses, they have to issue the tickets, they have to have the situation manned. So it costs money to do it, right? But there's enough people that's going to consistently violate it based on observing human behavior that you are going to make a profit, such that you got major, hedge funds and investing people who are investing in this company. And
I know that you brought your concerns to the council. You issued a letter. I think maybe Attorney John Elmore helped put this together. Just to be clear about that as well, that what got tabled for a committee? Is that how that worked?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, let's talk about this first, Bishop. We didn't. That wasn't our first letter. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
We issued letter.
Last year when we met with
so even before this went into
was it 2 years ago?
So even before this went into
absolutely.
Okay.
When they first presented this to the council, and it wasn't that the city put out a RFP. That's not how that happened. They actually came to the city. And
so a vendor came to the city,
exactly,
soliciting business.
And then the city issued the RFP
right.
to in order to implement the program.
Okay, all right, okay. And
so Councilman Wyatt asked that we meet, we being the urban think tank, meet with what's the name
Bus
of the
Patrol.
Bus Patrol. So we met with them. Hoyt was a part of that, and we met with one of their representatives, and we expressed exactly what we're expressing right now to them. We also wrote to the mayor and to the Common Council expressing our concerns. So this is not just, all of a sudden we're coming up with an issue, or that we didn't have a problem with it when it was first presented.
Yeah, and to Councilmember Wyatt's credit, right, he saw what happened with the speed zone cameras, and so he didn't just run to this. He asked some people to take a look at it, and so obviously when we looked at it, we saw the implications of the $250 fine. Again, nobody is challenging whether it's valuable to be able to track things that's going to lead to our children's safety. That's not the issue. The issue always was, what's that number for? What's the basis of the $250? Why $250? Well, and then research, you find out, well, yeah, in order for it to be profitable, which is the only reason why a for-profit company goes to the visit, right, you have to have a high ticket price, right? And then you have to have enough violations, consistently enough to make it worth the investment of the equipment and the AI. And again, the hidden part of it, people still not privy to or hip to, is that you also potentially have the profits that come from the data they're collecting. So there's this hidden motive that we're collecting data that we can use, that we can, get a buyer for, to use for other things. And so those things were things that we were, looking at even before they got here. We took a proactive position to warn the council that we did not think this was good for the city of Buffalo, whether it's good, we even talked about, would they do this in school districts that could afford a $250 ticket? Would they do this in Orchard Park? Would they do this in Clarence? Where the $250 may not be as a big a deal. You know what I'm saying? People in Buffalo live paycheck to paycheck. You know what I'm saying? So that's a big deal here. And the reality was, no, they're not going to do that there because there ain't enough buses to make it worth their while.
Right.
That becomes the issue. They knew that 500 to 600 buses every day were transporting kids. So this becomes, Buffalo was one of a city that it could be profitable. So they did their research.
Right. It made Buffalo attractive. I hate to use it that way, but when you think about 514 and somebody who's looking at where, a concentration of people who are vulnerable are at, and boom, here we go. Buffalo, becomes this place. Then there's other people who are look at this 500 to 600 people catching the bus, getting on these buses every day, and there's high poverty. So if we get in there, who's going to push back? Who's going to mobilize and organize and say, wait a minute, you're creating, because that's what Ferguson was. If you go look at the Department of Justice report, they said basically Ferguson are these people that have been pushed out of the edge into an edge city outside of St. Louis there, and it's concentrated poverty there. You know what I'm saying? And based on that concentrated poverty, we can exploit these people with fines and fees. And then the Department of Justice looked at it and said, whoa, you actually build the budgeting for this town based on these fines and fees. And Buffalo is like a little version of that. Look at the inner city of Buffalo where these buses are traveling at. This is where concentrated poverty is at. Generational poverty is going on here. So what are those people going to do against a corporation that got investors and got lobbyists, and they're going and they're getting state laws passed, they lobby and they get common council members to do their bidding for them, and then ultimately, boom, it's here. When the fine come, this is what John, the Attorney Elmer was making a point of. When the fine come, they may have innocently made a mistake and went past that bus, but that don't change the fact that $250, when you making $700-800 in a week, $250, that is an impact. You know what I'm saying? That means something don't get paid, something gets behind, somebody don't eat. Somebody has a real life effect for $250, and don't make a mistake and do it twice. You know what I'm saying? And then don't make the mistake of not paying the ticket. Think about if you don't pay the ticket. Then you get this cascading effect. You know what I'm saying? All because somebody who should have been looking out for the interests of these people who were not in a position to look out for their own interests didn't look out for it because they saw an opportunity to be able to bring in resources to help pad the city's budget.
So the larger conversation then, when they looked at the research and knew that 500 to 600 buses every day are traveling, the question becomes, why do we have that many buses? Why are we continuing to bus when the original purpose for busing is no longer an issue?
We ain't desegregating schools no more.
Right.
80% of the kids are a minority. You know what I'm
exactly.
Why don't we stop right there and take a pause? Because I think Bishop, you're opening up a big conversation here that I think we can utilize this time to get into as well. But we're going to get right back to it after we take a short break. With us, Sam Radford and Bishop Michael Badger of the Urban Think Tank of Buffalo. We're talking about the Buffalo School Bus Stop Armed Camera Program. We'll be back with more. This is What's Next on WBFO.
Discover the intersection of musical expression and emotional introspection. Listen to Mindful Music, hosted by mental health care worker Carl Shallowhorn. Saturdays at 4 p.m. and Sundays at 8 p.m. on WBFO.
Our mission at Buffalo Toronto Public Media is to serve our local community. And on WBFO, we do that by keeping you informed and connected to your community, whether it's by hearing from a local Black poet about what it was like to move from the inner city to the suburbs on What's Next.
So that emotional change with that culture change combined let me realize that basketball and being physical wasn't enough. I needed a way to figure out my emotions. So the first poem I wrote in the cafeteria of Sweet Home Middle School was Outcast.
Or it's exploring the East Side Garden Walk.
it's wonderful that we're seeing engagement in beautification and sharing gardens, because we believe that we can build more vibrant communities by sharing our gardens, by sharing our stories, and by building real connections between people. We came through as neighbors and cleaned this space out and began plot by plot putting plants in.
This is Public Media.
Hey, educators, you've been asking for it and it's here. Reading Rainbow Stories is ready to help your students stay on track. Each story is paired with activities to help students strengthen cross-curricular skills such as math and business in Lemonade for Sale.
Let's keep track of our sales.
Science and health in Germs Make Me Sick.
Usually, you feel better after a day or two. Thanks. But if you don't, you should see a doctor.
And history in Following the Drinking Gourd.
One of the worst things about slavery is that families were separated. Fathers, mothers, and children were oftentimes sold to different people.
Check out the new Reading Rainbow Stories collection on PBS Learning Media today to help your students stay on track.
You're listening to What's Next, our place to discuss the important issues of our communities of Western New York and Southern Ontario. We want to hear from you. Click on the Talk to Us option in the WBFO app, and we will work to get your questions or comments on the air. Do you have a story or concern that we should be addressing? Email us using whatsnext@wbfo.org. Together, we'll have the conversations that are needed. This is WBFO, your NPR station.
And welcome back to What's Next. With us from the Urban Think Tank of Buffalo, Sam Radford, and also Bishop Michael Badger, who, besides being the president of the Urban Think Tank, is also senior pastor of Bethesda World Harvest International Church. We came in, we're here to talk about the school bus stop arm camera program. I think we're touching on a lot of other issues that are involved in the city of Buffalo. And before we get to this, because Bishop, you did kind of open up the conversation, but I also want to just go back to before the camera program was implemented. You said letters were sent, outreach was made to city officials, including the mayor. What kind of response was there? Or was it, or are we seeing the response in the fact that this program is well implemented already?
You're seeing the response in that it was implemented. We did not get a response from the mayor, at least not that I know of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In other words, obviously we raised the question. Only response we got was from Councilmember Wyatt, who had the people come see us, raise the issues that we raised in the committee meeting. So he took our letter and our research, and again, when this happened, the first person we called was Councilmember Wyatt, and we reissued the letter, and it's on the agenda for the city council meeting. Matter of fact, it was on the agenda yesterday, and it's been referred to Finance Committee to look at it, and so we will be in the Finance Committee on December 3rd, having this conversation with the Common Council.
Okay, very good. So I wanted to make sure we got into that. But again, back to you, Bishop. You brought up an interesting point about, this program ostensibly is about keeping students safe on school buses. But your point was, and it's a very interesting point, why are students still being bused across the city of Buffalo? It was a program, obviously, that was established back in the 70s with the desegregation effort. And here we are some 50 years later, and we have lots of schools that were reconstructed, and yet busing is obviously still a very much a common practice here. You mentioned something in the break, very interesting, about before the three-bell system was implemented in schools, there were lots of kids who weren't getting full school days in the city of Buffalo. Yeah,
we met maybe a year and a half ago with the mayor and deputy mayor, superintendent, and some of her staff. And out of that meeting, it was created the Sunrise Transportation Committee. That committee met, and from that committee meeting, we were made aware that because of the bus shortage or the bus driver shortage, that around 13,000 of our children every day were not getting a full day of education. Mind you, were coming out of COVID. Right? And so that was absolutely alarming. And so we really made a push, because we were told that the three-bell system could help alleviate some of these issues.
Well, but let me add to that before you go there, because 13,000 students not getting a full day of instruction, Students are not allowed to have after-school programs because there's no busing to do the after-school program. Kids are not allowed to go on any field trips, no busing for the field trips. Kids are not allowed to do modified sports, the after-school sports program. You know what I'm saying? So Buffalo Public School kids, only kids in West New York who kids don't have basic necessities because we don't have enough bus drivers to be able to do that. And to add insult to injury, we're not giving them a full day of instruction. 50 minutes of the school day, they had to leave early in order for the bus to pick up one group of them and then to be able to come back and get the second group of them. So in order to get the bus to run 2 routes, some kids couldn't get the full day of instruction. And so this was after, by the time we met with the mayor and the superintendent, that was after a full year of not having kids, all these issues that we just raised not being the case, right? And the worst of that, I'd even need to say, every day they were leaving kids at the bus stop. A minimum of 1,500 kids were being just left at the bus stop. They would go stand at the bus stop and they don't know if the bus going to come or not come.
In the cold in Buffalo.
And some of them, and then they weren't getting home to 6, 7 o'clock. We was at a meeting one time and the guy who in charge of it, David Hills, was saying he getting a call now that the buses are clear, 7:30 at nighttime. You know what I'm saying? So this was going on for a full year. School board president Lou Petrucci at the time came and told us in May of that year that, this for the full year that's been going on, he said, and it's going to happen next year.
Whoa.
He says it's going to happen next year because we haven't figured out anything. That's when we got together and we said as the Urban Think Tank, we went and met with the superintendent and mayor. We said we got to do something about it. That's when we put the Sunrise Committee. And again, it still lasted for another year, you know what I'm saying, because we went through a process coming up with the 3-bill schedule, and the teachers union voted 80%, no, we don't want to do it. We had to go and lobby on every level, state, local, federal, to be able to get it to the point where the teachers union was eventually, gave in and agreed to the 3-bill schedule, which now got it to where we can get every school. Hopefully, we got more kids in school every day on time.
It's still a problem.
It's still a problem, but it ain't nowhere near 13,000 students not getting a full day of instruction. All the kids are getting a full day of instruction every day because now you got you got the 3-bill schedule.
Interesting to hear about the collaboration that went on here. And I guess advocacy would be a way of describing your role in this. Activism might be another way of describing it as well. But it does sound like a solution has been reached, or at least a partial solution has been reached. What about this school bus stop-arm camera program? Do you get that sense yet that there's that level of collaboration and listening and people being open to things that this issue can be resolved? Or right now, do you feel you're kind of on the outside looking in?
Well, I think once we meet with the finance committee and see how they posture themselves, we'll better be able to answer that question.
Okay. You want to be fair, I guess.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, and again, obviously you're going to have people because 2,250 people already, and that's just the first 10 days. So it's a lot more people who are affected by it to be a voice for what's going on. But again, this is really a balancing act, because we don't want to lose the focus on student safety, right? Mm-hmm. But for us, we know that this is not really about student safety, because we know areas where the students are not safe, where we don't have the same level of urgency. We know that there's not a bus aide on every bus. We got, 50 kids on a bus, every day, and you don't got a bus aide on the bus. So if you were really concerned about student safety, you wouldn't be taking this money, putting it in the city budget. You'd be taking this money and you'd be hiring bus aides. You know what I'm saying? So we know that all of our cameras on the bus don't work. So that students were being sexually molested and things were happening to students. And then when we went to look for the evidence, they said, the camera's not working. So now if you can get the AI to work for the bus arm, can you get the AI to work for the student safety on the bus? So if student safety is really a priority, let's not just do it when we're finding people. Let's do it when students are vulnerable, you know what I'm saying, in every area in which they're vulnerable.
Yeah, and I think, too, our politicians, that if they listen to this program, we have a structural problem where from Albany, you're allowed to basically feed off the core of cities, to cannibalize cities like Rochester, Syracuse, Albany, and Buffalo. There needs to be a wider conversation that happens about how do we restructure the way the laws are so that these cities not only can survive but thrive. I mean, most of the arts and most of the entertainment happens in the city. but yet you can't charge any type of tax or commuter fee or sales tax on a ticket that would be, everybody in the region would share in that, and you wouldn't impact poor people, because it's not the poor people that are going to Shays, right, or to one of the other events in downtown Buffalo, right? So and so, to be fair to a poor city, how do we do that? There has to be some restructuring. One of the things I would challenge our Common Council and our leadership with, you have one of the largest research colleges in the country. Get some of these bright minds to look at how urban centers should need to work as we move forward, so that Buffalo can then be a thriving, prosperous city like it once was.
And when you talk about that disenfranchisement, typically what Bishop is talking about, they call it the Big Five. The Big Five is the large urban school districts in New York State: Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Yonkers, and New York City. But if you take New York City out of it, which is its own animal, Buffalo, Syracuse, Rochester, you really see, what is happening in these urban cores. So let's take something really practical from an education perspective. In Western New York, every school district votes on its budget every year except Buffalo.
Right.
Buffalo don't vote on this budget. Over half of our tax levy goes to the school district. You know what I'm saying? But we don't have a vote on whether that budget passes or not. You know what I'm saying? So their infrastructure. So you got people disenfranchised because of how Albany, you know what I'm saying, has these cities structured, and it's serious, and it's not working. They are perpetually poor urban cores. So if they're perpetually poor, either we knowingly are doing that and we are building up our suburban, communities based on the backs of the poverty that's going on in these urban core, or we haven't figured out a way to effectively come up with something that at least alleviates the concentration of poverty that are taking places in these urban cores.
And when those laws came about, it was to stop the city from gobbling up suburbs, and okay, we get that. Okay, but now, we're in a different place now, and you've got some of the richest suburbs in the country around one of the poorest cities in the country, and I think it says something about the whole region when your core is that poor. We should all feel like we need to be a part of helping this solve this problem, this issue.
Let me ask you this. We have, for the first time in almost 2 decades, we're going to have a race for the mayor's position that the longtime incumbent won't be running for office. And we right now basically know there are at least 3 candidates,
right.
3 of whom will be sitting in this very room in the coming week or so, talking about issues in the city of Buffalo. Do you anticipate what we're talking about right here being part of this political conversation coming up? There's a chance to make a change at the top in City Hall here. Do you anticipate not just the school bus stop-on cameras, but this general conversation that we've kind of got into? Do you see that becoming part of this conversation?
Just to be clear, I know you're talking about Scanlon and Ryan. I mean, obviously, we've heard other people announce, that, the former fire commissioner, Garner Whitfield has announced.
He's met with us.
Yeah.
We have not met with Scanlon or Ryan yet. We hope to do so.
Okay.
And we'll be asking those kind of questions.
All right. I was just, I thought it might be a good chance to see where that happens, and I'd like to.
Well, I think without question, these are critical questions that are part of that conversation.
Right.
Especially when looking at how they're looking at filling what some people are saying is a $50-60 million budget gap. I heard Mayor Brown say it was only $10 or $15 million, but even getting to the bottom of that, but the issues around how we're going to deal with education. Because I think the conversation around, what we're doing is not working. I mean, at the end of the day, we cannot continue to graduate kids who are not college and career ready. We cannot continue to have kids, who are, can't read, write, and do math on grade level. And we're having, some incremental best, but when we having 2 and 3% improvement, in a school district where, over 75% of the kids cannot read, write, or do math on grade level, that's a long, trudge toward trying to get to something even reasonable. We think that, we need to do something much more, intentional, much more radical, whether that's mayoral control, mayoral involvement, mayoral appointments to the school board. But we need a chief executive of the city that's much more invested in education and education outcomes that we saw. We've seen that, basically Mayor Brown, that was kind of hands off. He didn't rock the boat over in that area. I'm saying I think that I don't know that we can go forward as a city another 20 years with a mayor who's not effectively engaging in what is going on in the education space. You look at New York City, the mayoral control of school district brought significant progress. They went from behind Buffalo to ahead of Buffalo, with that. So I think it's a conversation that whoever's running for mayor need to be in.
It's said that all politics are local, right? But when you look nationally at the issues, what was said is that poor people felt like they weren't being listened to by the government. Isn't it amazing that we're saying the same things about what's happening here in Buffalo? I think our politicians better start listening, because people are suffering out there, and you can't keep doing the same thing expecting a different result.
We're going to take one more time out. I think that, once again, you gave us a good exclamation point to go to a break here, Bishop. So thanks for that. Bishop Michael Badger, Sam Radford from the Urban Think Tank of Buffalo with us on What's Next. We'll be back to finish up our program right after this.
Our mission at Buffalo Toronto Public Media is to serve our local community. And on WBFO, we do that by keeping you informed. We bring you important perspectives from your neighbors on what's next.
It's cultural heritage tourism. People go and they travel different places to learn about history and lived experiences that only took place in that area. Oftentimes you may have people in certain positions that don't understand the value of cultural heritage tourism.
And we investigate issues in our community, such as racial disparities in traffic stops.
The data breakdown by council district shows that black people are stopped disproportionately to their population in all 9 districts. Lovejoy District leads the pack in terms of those disproportionate stops. Just 37% of the district's population is black, yet black motorists account for almost 70% of stop receipts issued there. This is public media.
Did you know that WNED PBS is always working on great new local shows for you to watch? Documentaries like Kleinhand's Gift to Buffalo, which tells the story of Buffalo's music hall.
The hall is very intimate, and that intimacy makes everyone who comes in here feel a part of our family.
Fun and educational series like Compact Science.
Believe it or not, peppers are technically fruits.
And Shakespeare's greatest hits, featuring some of his best-known soliloquies and monologues.
We are such stuff as dreams are made of.
You can watch them all on our website at wned.org/local shows. While you're there, check out the show pages and mini websites for additional content such as bonus features, photo galleries, and lesson plans. Find it all at wned.org/local shows.
Looking for an award-winning original series to binge? Buffalo Toronto Public Media has something for everyone. Check out Brave Spaces, Compact History, and Let's Go at WNED.org or on the BTPM YouTube channel.
You're listening to What's Next, our place to discuss the important issues of our communities of Western New York and Southern Ontario. We want to hear from you. Click on the Talk to Us option in the WBFO app, and we will work to get your questions or comments on the air. Do you have a story or concern that we should be addressing? Email us using whatsnext@wbfo.org. Together we'll have the conversations that are needed. This is WBFO, your NPR station.
And welcome back to What's Next. With us from the Urban Think Tank of Buffalo, Samuel Radford and Bishop Michael Badger. We were able to get both of you gentlemen in here to talk about the school bus stop arm camera program. We've gotten into a lot of that. But Bishop, you touched on a topic that I'd really like to maybe just get into a little bit about the way the city school district is structured, in the sense that busing is a huge need. It's a need because of where kids are being sent to schools. Just on a on a level, I mean, again, I don't necessarily want you to commit to anything, but as you consider how the city school district is set up, do you see possibilities where busing could be, if not eliminated, most certainly reduced dramatically?
Absolutely. I think we need to go back to community schools. 80% of our children are black and brown children, and so therefore there's no need to try to desegregate. So at this point, I think we need to go back to community schools. You're going to have some commuting happening, but not to the extent that we're having it right now. And this being a choice district, my understanding, and we'll find out from the research, that 70% of children don't have a choice. And then
they're placed. 70% of children are placed. Only 30% of kids get a choice.
Okay.
And so then, when you look at the fact that these schools in our districts are not open for our children to have, after our programs, I think we need to go back to having community schools where the school becomes the hub for activities for that community. So that not only are children having after-school programs, but we got GED programs and other things happening, swimming programs, so that our adults as well as children learn how to swim.
Trades
program. We've got these beautiful buildings sitting in the middle of our community, and we cannot use them. So absolutely, we need to rethink about going back to community schools.
Take a snapshot of Olmsted Middle and High School. It's sitting in the middle of Langfield property.
City honors.
You know what I'm saying? City honors.
Oh, my goodness.
But that school is sitting there, and the people who in that neighborhood right there can walk to it, have no access to that building for after-school program. It got a beautiful swimming pool on every floor there. It got computer labs. It got a music studio in there. All those resources right there in the middle of this housing development, and the people who live there don't have access to it. I mean, how you make that make sense? I mean, we have to go back to a model where kids go to schools closer to their neighborhood, and we quote unquote bust them so they can get to a better school. Well, obviously that didn't work, you know what I'm saying, because we don't got no better outcomes. So let's stop the craziness of this busing program. I mean, go look at it. It really is exploiting, again, to tell people that we are allowing you to be bused because of choice. That's the reason why you get to go to school of your choice. When we know only 30% of the kids get to go to school of their choice. It's just exploiting poor people again. I mean, even when you look at how the school is structured, right now, the school is structured based on neighborhood school system. The governance model of the school district is based on neighborhood schools. You have 3 at-large members, and you have 6 district members. Why do you got district members, sub-district members in a school district of choice? Rochester's a choice school district. Everybody's an at-large member. Why? There's no relationship between my vote. I live in the East District. My children went to school in the Central District. So I vote for the East District member, but the school is in the Central District. So we didn't realign the governance model to the model of how we operate when we went to a choice district. I think leave the governance model how it is and go back to a system to where when I vote for the person in the North District, it's affecting the school in the neighborhood I live in and the schools that are in my neighborhood. Right now, there's no relationship to that. There's no connection. It's just, again, it's a system that exists because of the concentrated poverty and the lack of vigilance in our leaderships to make sure that we have real representation that will bring about change. Right now, the representation really, in my opinion, is designed to protect the interests of unions. You know what I'm saying? And unions, the school board used to be controlled totally by the union. All 9 board members before this year were endorsed by the union. And the union just sustained a system that benefits them in suburbs at the expense of cities, and our city leadership don't do anything to defend the people in the city.
In urban districts, you have an employment system that educates children. That doesn't happen in suburban districts. You have an education system that employs adults. So when you have it in the reverse, whenever there's an issue between the comfortability of adults and the education of children, the adults always win. Mm-hmm. And that happens constantly in Buffalo.
That's the reason why you can have 80% of the teachers vote to not do a 3-bell system, even though they know that 13,000 kids are not getting a full day of instruction. Because at the end of the day, they like, I got to go home and be with my kids. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to be here. I don't want to do after. We barely do after school programs in the city of Buffalo no more.
And that's
Teachers got a great contract. They don't need the money to do after school anymore. So go look at what happened to the after school program. Who's impacted by that? The people who can least afford to be.
That's why our district was one of the last districts to go back to school with COVID. Even though the teachers' children that are teaching our children, their kids were back in school. They only missed maybe a month or two of school. You see what I'm saying? So once again, it is an employment system that educates children.
We were the last, Bishop. Buffalo Public School District was the last school district in New York State to send their kids to school, back to school.
And teachers were saying it wasn't safe, but it was safe for you to send your child back to school in the suburbs. See, here again, we're cannibalizing the core by the way Albany has structured laws, and it has to be looked at, because if you don't, you're going to continue to get what we're getting now, and it's getting worse.
And this bus patrol issue, is to bring it back around, is exactly that. Albany is the one who first passed the law to allow you to be able to put the bus patrol stop arms on the buses, and put the AI on there. They go to the local city council. The city council approves. They go in partnership, with the school district, and basically, just like they protect the union, now they're in protection of this for-profit company, who got lobbyists and people, to go advocate, for this opportunity to what? This opportunity to exploit poor people in the name of making them safer, when the truth of the matter is you don't got no evidence that you made them safer. The only evidence you can provide is that you decreased the number of people who go by the bus iron, but you didn't stop the people from going by the bus iron. Take the contrast that with what happened with the speed zone cameras. When people raise concerns about why we being fined for going past the speeding in the speed zone area, at the end of the day, they came up with a solution that actually helped solve the problem. As opposed to fining people, they put speed bumps there. So now what has happened? I don't have to fine nobody. You know what the speed bump does? It actually stops the person from speeding. Right. You know what I'm saying? That was a solution that could have been put in place before you spent the money of taking people's money in fines. But why are we using our minds to figure out a way to actually solve problems as opposed to exploiting problems? We're shearing the sheep. As long as they grow in wool, we taking the dive as they go. And we got to challenge our leadership to do better than that.
Let me just turn this around as we get closer to the end of the program in this regard. It's like you mentioned, when it came to the school bus stop arm camera program, there was a lobbyist pushing, getting support, finding ways to get their platform out there. What about here in the city of Buffalo? And we've got the urban think tank of Buffalo. You guys are, you're focused on it, but at the same time, do you feel like your message is getting to enough people where the message can make a difference, not just on this program, when we're calling it the school bus stop arm camera program, but also on the other issues that we've raised in this program? What do you think? Is there that type of advocacy? Is that that type of energy in the city of Buffalo?
Absolutely. I think what we've learned, the school bus stop our program just started October 1st, right? We ain't waiting 6 months before we start to mobilize, right? As soon as the first bit of data came in, well, we know we got actual facts, because when we were originally doing the advocacy work, it was all speculation. We didn't know for sure what was going to happen. Now we saw the first 10 days, the minute we got actual data to verify what was going on, now we went into action right away. We had our meeting, we issued a press release, we had a meeting with the Common Council member, and now we are going full force. On this show, we're going to go to the Common Council, and we are going to start to mobilize people to have a closer look at this, and we're going to ask the Common. We made 5 or 6 recommendations to the Common Council of things that we need to be done, and so we're going to start to mobilize the community to be able to see if we can get all those recommendations done to ultimately culminate with having some type of oversight body. If you're going to do this and you're going to maintain this, having some type of oversight body over what's happening here, and also to drive those resources that are collected toward actually making students safer and really renegotiating this idea of giving 60% of this profit to a for-profit company. Those are things we think must be done, and we're going to mobilize and advocate to do that.
And I think also with the fining, define according to people's income. If you can afford a $250 fine and it's not going to disrupt your life, then fine. But for those that literally it could drive them into bankruptcy, let's look at a lesser fine.
And the biggest piece of this is, how do we use this data we're collecting? You know what I'm saying? That's an interesting point, because this is really, you know exactly who's violating. You know where they're at. You know when they're violating. You know when it's morning or afternoon. You got comprehensive data, that you can now use to inform your planning. You know what I'm saying? So what is the process to do? The Common Council have a process where they're getting the report every month, and then they're giving that report to somebody, the school district, somebody, somebody, the police department, somebody saying, okay, we know exactly where this is a crime. This is a violation of the law that's taking place, right? We know exactly where, when, and how, and who. What are we doing to prevent it from taking place? Because this particular crime can have a detrimental, impact on children, right? So let's go and use this data in a way that we're not using for a for-profit business to make a profit, but we're using to make kids safer, make our city, a much more, a better place to live. That's a better use of the data, in my opinion.
Well, we'll have to leave it at that because we are out of time, but this conversation flew. I so appreciate the perspectives, not only on the school bus stop on camera, but also the other issues inside the city of Buffalo. Bishop Badger and Sam Radford, thanks very much for joining us on What's Next.
Thank you for having
Thanks, Jay. Appreciate it.
Great conversation of this morning here on What's Next with Bishop Michael Badger, the senior pastor of Bethesda World Harvest International Church and the president of the urban think tank of Buffalo, along with Sam Radford. This is What's Next on WBFO.
Support for WBFO and What's Next comes from our members and from Health Foundation for Western and Central New York, where racial and socioeconomic health equity are prioritized. Learn more about building healthier neighborhoods at hfwcny.org.